I'm Billy S, welcome back to the channel. Today we're allowing ourselves to be intimidated as I rank my favourite boss introduction cutscene from each Soulsborne game. In 2023 I did a similar video topic where I ranked my favourite overall cutscenes from each game, with a whole heaping of bias. But with the boss introductions, I'm looking for a slightly different set of criteria, and there's always a chance my opinions have changed since then. 1. Does the introduction make me intimidated or excited for the battle? 2. Does the introduction give me a solid overview of the boss itself? 3. Is the cinematography interesting? Do they play around with camera angles or blocking? It's worth noting I am not ranking boss phase transition cutscenes. I just think they have a different energy to them, they're often extremely iconic, and build upon concepts of the boss's introductory cutscene, so I'm gonna leave them for a video all of their own. And be sure to parry that subscribe button and tune in next week when I reveal my least favourite boss intros in the series. Without further ado, my favourite boss intros from each Soulsborne game. Let me know your picks down below. An opinion of mine that has not changed since 2023 is a simple one, that the Penetrator has the best boss cutscene in Demon Souls, though it's a game with some really interesting imagery when it comes to its cutscenes overall. I think about the way the camera tilts with the old Hero's cutscene as he comes down from the wall, or the way the camera angles reveal more and more of the Storm King in his introduction. But the Penetrator is just something special. They play around with his introduction using clever angles to deliver a horror movie style stab in the back, the fat official you've been following this whole level getting skewered by the actual boss. The reveal of the Penetrator stepping through the fog gate on the far end, the way the camera angles change as he launches the corpse before it cuts back to him now in fighting position, it's such a smartly designed cutscene that really emphasizes that the developers wanted the Penetrator to be intimidating. Of course, his fight is relatively simple for today's standards, but imagine being someone playing this in 2009. Whether you watch the original or the remake cutscene, you're getting the same overall focus. Maybe I'm not as big a fan of the blood red aura he gets in the remake, I find it a tad tacky, and some of the blood looks a bit off when it spurts out of the fat official, but it's not enough to kill the cutscene or anything. Nah, they saved that for False King Alant by making him a generic white guy with no intimidation because his cutscene was designed with the undersaturated darker lighting system of the original game. Adding all this saturation just makes him look like a rejected Disney character. Art style goes such a long way here. For Dark Souls, the obvious picks here are Artorias, or Sif, or Woedenaz. Nobody is debating that, except I've talked about all three of those cutscenes to death in other videos revolving around their fights. So even though I would say Sif is my favourite due to the variance in cutscene depending on your DLC adventures and the sheer tragedy of it all, I'm gonna go for a bit more of an out there pick today. Gaping Dragon. A lot of players skip the depths now when they replay Dark Souls because you can grab the Master Key as your starting gift and head straight to Blighttown. But it means people tend to forget that first playthrough where you had no choice but to take the depths and defeat the Gaping Dragon. And after fighting a few demons, some gargoyles, maybe a butterfly, I don't think anybody was expecting to be faced with a dragon so early on. He starts off small, like a little alligator popping his nose out, until suddenly you see sharp white pieces of bone, and as this creature begins to pull itself from the hole on the far side of the arena, you're introduced to a nightmare. A voracious appetite that has slowly eaten away at its own body, its ribcage creating rows of deadly teeth that want nothing more than to continue eating away at whatever creatures find themselves here. It's the first time a Dark Souls player encounters something so horrifying, yet so absolutely metal. There are many boss intros in this series now, yet I cannot get that image burned out of my head of those rows and rows and rows of teeth. It's not my favourite in Dark Souls, which is counterintuitive to this video title, it's just the one I really wanted to talk about today. Dark Souls 2 has the weakest cinematography of the lot when it comes to boss introductions. I don't feel bad saying it. That ugly-ass red filter that appears at the start of every cutscene is just irritating. I understand why it's there, it's just not very fun. A lot of the bosses then got cutscenes that weren't even interesting. Old Iron King just comes out of the lava. Last Giant runs at you because he's pissed you've come back to haunt him a century later. There weren't any cutscenes in the DLCs, what was that about, FromSoft? Nashandra almost took this spot, I really love her cutscene to death, but if we're talking a boss introduction that intimidates the player while getting across exactly who this creature is, while also having fun cinematography, we need to call up the Pursuer. The first thing you see isn't even him, it's his fucking sword slamming into the ground. The camera pans up and he rides in on a giant eagle landing beside his blade. The wide shots show the eagle flying away as the Pursuer raises up, his helmet flaring red like Cyclops from the X-Men as his dark, smoky curse activates. He pulls the sword out from the stone, and naturally, he begins to fucking float. Compared to most of the early game, the Pursuer is just terrifying. He's on a whole different level of design to most of the bosses in Dark Souls 2, and I truly believe he was supposed to be a far more important boss than he ended up in the final version. There's too much care for him here. You see how he floats, you see his trademark weapon, you see his magic very briefly. It's a perfect cutscene to introduce you to the boss, all set to a drenched sunset that provides a gorgeous warm contrast to his dark, cold exterior. Phenomenal job, Dark Souls 2. For Bloodborne, this is actually my only tie on this video, winner winner 2 chicken dinners, because I realised that my two picks are essentially good for the same reasons. Lady Maria of the Astral Clock Tower, and Gehrman, the First Hunter. I've gone on record stating that I find hunter fights more intimidating and exciting in Bloodborne overall, so it makes sense that my third and second favourite fights in the game would start this with their boss intros. For Maria, we have the iconic "a corpse should be left well alone" line, as she pulls you in, revealing whatever horrific monstrosity you're playing as to the camera. Then she picks herself off the chair, dusts herself off, the camera now following behind as she snaps her weapon in two, and with that camera angle shows exactly why you should be afraid of her. She's in your way, and she's not about to move for anything. Gehrman is basically the same cutscene, but with slightly different circumstances. Maria was a corpse, Gehrman was wheelchair-bound. Both of them stand up from their chairs, revealing their signature hunter weapons to the player, and both of them are ready to absolutely fuck up your shit. Gehrman pulling out his scythe will never not be exciting to me, especially when it fades to black and he just says, "Tonight, Gehrman joins the hunt." It never fails to pump me up for his boss battle. I just find it interesting that student and teacher, both within their own respective dream worlds, have the exact same way of starting their fights against the hunter. It's a really nice moment where you can tell FromSoft purposefully left these parallels when designing Maria, whose cutscene was developed later on. For some reason, I thought there were more boss cutscenes in Dark Souls 3 than there actually are. In the base game, there are only 5 boss introduction cutscenes, being Vort, the Abyss Watchers, High Lord Wolnir, the Dancer, and the Twin Princes. 6 if you include Siegward joining you to fight Yorm, with the DLCs adding Sister Fried and Slave Knight Gale to the mix. Now, phase transitions, there's a lot more bosses we could include on that list, but that is not today's video. So, let's talk about the Dancer of the Boreal Valley, shall we? A video last year by Zully the Witch showcased the eldritch implications that Dark Souls 3 potentially had during its development cycle, especially represented by Pontiff Sullivan and his beasts, specifically the myth of the Hounds of Tyndalos. These creatures appear from smoke within any corner of 120 degrees or less, a head emerging, the body following, blue ichor left in their wake. The exact same as the Dancer of the Boreal Valley. The doors close behind you, the lights flicker out, Droplets of blue ichor appear from the sky, and as the camera pans up from the corner of the ceiling, a creature materializes from the smoke. Her head emerging before the rest of the body drops down to greet you. Her footsteps pound against the floor, and her breathy countenance unnerves even the strongest-willed among us. It's such a grand reveal, one that was so powerful it was used as part of Dark Souls 3's demo back in the day. I recall so many early previews where people discovered the dancer and it became a race to defeat her, despite being so powerful. Her cutscene shows her threat level, and while also being a brilliant reference to its source material, it really goes above and beyond. For Sekiro, I'm not going to be contrarian here. My favourite boss intro is still my favourite cutscene in this game. It's the reveal of Isshin Ashina at the end, where Genichiro cuts his own neck so that his grandpa can emerge and take back their land. Now, Billy, I hear you cry, this isn't a boss intro, as by my own rules, shouldn't the Genichiro Ashina cutscene prior to this be the boss intro? And my excuse, because yes, I'm making an excuse, is that Genichiro and Isshin are two very distinct, different characters. So I personally feel that with Isshin Ashina, his introduction where he emerges from Genichiro is his boss introduction. Yes, you still have to fight Genichiro every single time you want to face him, but just let me have this one, please. I've been sick for a week. Beyond the extremely metal imagery of Isshin literally crawling out of the neck of his grandson, I love the intimidation of the Sword Saint. He's in his battle gear, he's looking like he did in the intro cinematics, he's holding that sword like a champ, and with the fierce look in his eyes, it's nothing like Genichiro before this. It's true power, true fury, all set in that field of flowers where you started the game all those hours ago, only this time you're finally ready to face your destiny and end all of this for good. And I can't go without saying that Genichiro gathering the courage to kill himself at the start of this cutscene is pretty intense too. The emotions he goes through before committing the deed, realizing he's got nothing left to give, is just really hard to watch. One of my commenters, Vahue, actually described this cutscene for Isshin as, "I'm out of the closet and the closet is my grandson." And I genuinely feel like a changed man. It's so funny. It's the main reason I wanted to talk about this cutscene today, because I just needed something to laugh about. Oh. And now we land at Elden Ring, and there are so many good boss intro cutscenes here, from Radahn to Morgott to Mohg, the Dancing Lion, Margit, Godric, Godfrey, Radagon, but I truly feel that while Shadow of the Erd Tree skimped way too hard on the cutscene front, they made sure to give the right bosses that treatment. Midra ends up in the same position as our Sekiro entry with the same type of boss fight, but I'm gonna call this a proper boss transition, not an intro, because in both of Midra's phases we are fighting Midra. As said, in Sekiro it was Genichiro and then Isshin, two different characters, but we will talk about Midra in a few weeks, trust in the process. No, I think the best boss intro is, hands down, Messmer the Impaler. Entering the darkened room, only for the candles to click to life instantly, Messmer's voice booming around the empty hall, you look around confused, and then a serpent's eye. The reveal of one of Messmer's scaly companions as it slithers back over to its master. The reveal of Messmer himself is enthralling. He's intimidating, in full armor, serpents winding around him, and he immediately turns on the gas, flames pouring from his hand in a show that he's done so many times before. You're not the first to try to kill him, so why not break out that script he's practiced a billion times? And yet with the glow of his yellow eyes and the contrasts of the reds, oranges, and the darks, Messmer shows exactly who he is and why you should be afraid. It sets his character up perfectly, and the fact he's got more personality than a lot of the base game bosses is kind of insane to me, but makes so much sense. I wish more DLC bosses got this treatment. R'Lana, Romina, Meta, all the women. Damn, FromSoft. And that's my list. Which boss introduction cutscenes are your favourite? Let me know down below, and be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all my future videos. I want to give a shout out to my YouTube channel members for supporting me for another month. You guys are amazing. It's $4.99, gets you access to future videos early, it gets you a special secret Let's Play only available to my YouTube channel members, and you get shout outs at the end of the video as well. So thank you everyone for tuning in. I will see you next time for another video. Adios.